Madison Harper, 28 years old, wakes up in a sterile hospital room after 3 months in a coma, tubes still attached to her arms. The silence is deafening. No flowers, no cards, no family. She discovers through overheard nurse conversations that her husband Derek and sister Brittany haven't visited in weeks. The wedding ring on her finger feels foreign now. As she struggles to piece together fragmented memories, a lawyer arrives with documents that will shatter everything she thought she knew about loyalty, family, and the fortune hidden in her name. Before we dive into this incredible story of betrayal and ultimate triumph, let me know where you're watching from in the comments below. If you're ready to discover how one woman's family turned against her for money they didn't even know existed, make sure to hit that like button and subscribe for more shocking true stories. Trust me, you won't believe what happens when greed tears a family apart and justice finally prevails. Now, let's uncover the truth about Madison's nightmare. The fluorescent lights above Madison's hospital bed hummed with an electric persistence that seemed to mock the emptiness surrounding her. As consciousness slowly returned to her battered body, the first thing that struck her wasn't the physical pain from her injuries, but the profound loneliness that filled the sterile room. No get-well cards lined the windowsill. No balloons bobbed cheerfully from bedside tables, and no familiar faces greeted her awakening. Instead, she found herself staring at blank white walls that seemed to close in with each labored breath she took. The memories of her accident came flooding back in fragmented pieces, like a shattered mirror reflecting distorted images of that fateful night. She remembered Derek gripping the steering wheel with white knuckles, his voice raised in anger as he accused her of being secretive about their finances. The argument had been escalating for weeks, with Derek becoming increasingly suspicious about her reluctance to discuss certain investments she had made years before they met. That night, his frustration had reached a boiling point as they drove home from dinner with his business partners, who had made casual comments about Madison's apparent financial independence. "You're hiding something from me," Derek had shouted over the rain pounding against the windshield. "I'm your husband, Madison. I have a right to know what kind of money you're sitting on." The car had swerved slightly as his attention shifted from the road to her face, searching for answers she wasn't ready to give. She remembered the blinding headlights of an oncoming truck, the screech of brakes on wet asphalt, and then nothing but darkness that would consume 3 months of her life. When Nurse Janet finally entered the room during her evening rounds, Madison learned the devastating truth about her family's abandonment. "Honey, I'm so glad you're finally awake," Janet said with genuine warmth, her kind eyes reflecting a mixture of relief and sadness. "We've been hoping and praying for this moment." But as Janet checked her vital signs and adjusted her IV, Madison noticed the hesitation in her voice when she asked about visitors. The truth emerged slowly, painfully, like poison being drawn from a wound. Derek had stopped visiting after the first week, claiming the sight of Madison in a coma was too traumatic for him to handle. He had told the hospital staff that he needed to focus on their business and couldn't bear to see his wife in such a helpless state. But Janet's carefully chosen words revealed a different story. The insurance payments had mysteriously stopped coming after the second month, leaving Madison's medical bills to pile up like autumn leaves. Derek had cleaned out their joint bank accounts, citing the need to protect their assets, while Madison was incapacitated. The betrayal cut even deeper when Madison learned about her family's response to the crisis. Her mother, Patricia, had visited only once in 3 months, spending most of that brief encounter complaining to nurses about Madison's secretive nature and how she had always been difficult to understand. Her sister Brittany had been more vocal in her absence, spreading rumors throughout their social circle that Madison had been hiding significant financial assets from her own family, painting herself as the victim of Madison's supposed deception. Derek's actions during Madison's coma revealed the true nature of their marriage in ways that no conscious conversation ever could have. Within weeks of the accident, he had moved in with his secretary, Sarah, claiming he needed emotional support during his wife's medical crisis. He had filed preliminary separation papers, citing irreconcilable differences and requesting a significant portion of what he assumed were Madison's hidden assets. The man who had promised to love her in sickness and in health had apparently interpreted those vows as conditional upon her consciousness and financial transparency. The most crushing revelation came when Janet quietly informed Madison that her family had been making inquiries about her estate and inheritance policies, assuming she would never wake up from her vegetative state. They had been planning for her death, dividing assets they believed existed, and positioning themselves to benefit from her permanent absence. The woman who had always prided herself on being generous with her family, who had secretly paid off Brittany's student loans and helped her parents with their mortgage, discovered that her loved ones saw her primarily as a financial resource to be exploited. As Madison lay in that hospital bed, processing the magnitude of her family's betrayal, she felt a transformation beginning deep within her core. The naive trust she had always extended to those closest to her was crystallizing into something harder, more calculating. She realized that her instinct to hide her substantial wealth had been prophetic, protecting her from the very people who claimed to love her unconditionally. The fortune her late father had helped her accumulate through early cryptocurrency investments and tech startup ventures had been her secret shield, and now she understood why he had made her promise to keep it hidden from everyone, including family. The irony wasn't lost on her that Derek's accusations about financial secrecy had been absolutely correct. She did have hidden assets. Substantial ones, worth more than he could have imagined in his greediest fantasies. But his betrayal during her most vulnerable time had proven exactly why those secrets had been necessary. As she prepared to face whatever came next, Madison knew that the woman who woke up from that coma would be fundamentally different from the trusting wife and sister who had entered it 3 months earlier. The moment word spread through the hospital corridors that Madison Harper had awakened from her 3-month coma, her family materialized like carrion birds sensing fresh opportunity. Derek was the first to arrive, his expensive cologne failing to mask the stench of guilt that seemed to follow him down the antiseptic hallways. He entered her room with a bouquet of roses that appeared hastily purchased from the hospital gift shop, their wilted petals and discounted price tag telling their own story of his calculated concern. "Madison, sweetheart, thank God you're okay," Derek whispered as he approached her bedside, his voice dripping with manufactured emotion. Tears gathered in his eyes with suspicious convenience as he reached for her hand, the same hand he had abandoned for 3 months while she fought for her life. "I've been so worried about you, so scared that I might lose you forever." The performance was masterful in its insincerity, complete with trembling lips and carefully timed pauses that might have convinced someone who didn't know about his cohabitation with his secretary or his systematic draining of their joint accounts. Madison studied her husband's face with new clarity, seeing him perhaps for the first time without the rose-colored glasses of love and trust. His concern seemed rehearsed, his grief performed rather than felt. When she remained silent, Derek's demeanor shifted subtly, revealing flashes of the calculating opportunist beneath his grieving husband facade. "The doctors weren't sure you'd ever wake up," he continued, his tone becoming more urgent. "I had to make some difficult financial decisions while you were unconscious. I hope you'll understand that everything I did was to protect us, to protect our future together." The explanation that followed was a masterpiece of manipulation and deflection. Derek painted himself as a reluctant guardian forced to make impossible choices during Madison's medical crisis. He claimed that her secretiveness about their finances had left him in an untenable position when insurance companies demanded detailed asset information. "I had to act quickly to preserve what we had," he insisted, his eyes never quite meeting hers directly. "The medical bills were astronomical, and I couldn't risk losing everything we'd worked for together." Brittany arrived within hours of Derek's visit, bringing their mother Patricia in tow like a reinforcement battalion prepared for siege warfare. The reunion was a carefully orchestrated performance of familial love, with both women embracing Madison with tears and proclamations of relief that felt hollow against the backdrop of their 3-month absence. Brittany, always the more direct of the two sisters, wasted little time before steering the conversation toward the topic that had apparently consumed their family during Madison's unconscious months. "We've been so worried about everything," Brittany said, her concern extending far beyond Madison's health. "Derek told us about some of the financial complications you've been dealing with, and we want to help however we can." The statement hung in the air like bait on a hook, fishing for information about assets and investments that Madison had never discussed with her family. "Mom and I have been talking, and we think it might be helpful if you shared some of the details about your investments with us. You know, just so we can support you better." Patricia, ever the matriarch, approached the subject with more subtlety but equal determination. "Darling, we've always known you were smart with money, smarter than the rest of us, certainly," she began, her voice laden with false humility. "But Derek has mentioned that there might be some accounts or investments that we don't know about. As your family, we feel responsible for helping you manage these things, especially while you're recovering from such a traumatic experience." The suggestion that Madison was somehow incapable of managing her own affairs, while conscious, was delivered with maternal concern that barely concealed its predatory nature. The questioning became more persistent as the days passed, with each family member taking turns probing Madison about her financial situation with increasing urgency. Derek spoke of joint financial planning and the importance of transparency in marriage, conveniently forgetting his own recent transparency regarding his secretary. Brittany appealed to sisterly solidarity, suggesting that Madison's secrecy was somehow a betrayal of their family bond. Patricia played the aging mother card, expressing concerns about her own financial security and hinting that Madison's wealth could provide family stability. The truth about their coordinated investigation emerged gradually through Madison's growing network of hospital allies. Nurse Janet, who had become protective of her patient during the lonely months of Madison's coma, quietly revealed that Derek had been making regular calls to various financial institutions, claiming to be Madison's power of attorney and demanding account information. Brittany had been spotted at Madison's apartment building multiple times, apparently searching for financial documents or evidence of hidden assets. Even Patricia had been making inquiries with Madison's former colleagues and college friends, fishing for information about her daughter's mysterious financial independence. The family's desperation became more apparent when Madison learned about their consultation with private investigator Shane Wilson. Derek had hired him ostensibly to investigate the car accident, but Wilson's real assignment involved uncovering Madison's financial portfolio and investment history. The family had pooled their resources to pay for this investigation, convinced that Madison was hiding substantial wealth that they deserved to access, particularly given her current medical situation and uncertain future. Their first coordinated attack came in the form of legal pressure designed to establish their right to access Madison's affairs. Derek's attorney filed preliminary papers questioning Madison's mental competency following her traumatic brain injury, suggesting that her judgment might be permanently impaired by the accident. The legal strategy was transparent in its opportunism, positioning Derek as a concerned husband seeking to protect his wife's interests, while simultaneously establishing his right to control those interests. The family united behind this effort, providing supporting testimony about Madison's supposedly erratic behavior and secretive tendencies. The competency challenge was accompanied by medical opinions purchased through Derek's growing network of corrupted professionals. Dr. Williams, the family physician who had known Madison since childhood, provided convenient testimony about her pre-accident mental state, suggesting that her secrecy about finances indicated underlying psychological instability. The medical records were subtly altered to support narratives of paranoia and financial delusions, creating a paper trail that would justify external control of Madison's assets. As Madison processed the scope of her family's betrayal, she realized that their concern for her well-being was entirely conditional upon their access to her wealth. They had transformed her near-death experience into an opportunity for financial gain, her unconscious months into a treasure hunt for hidden assets. The people who should have been her support system during recovery had instead become the primary threat to her independence and security. The irony was devastating. In their greed to uncover her financial secrets, they had revealed the ugly truth about their own characters, proving beyond doubt that her instinct to hide her wealth had been absolutely justified. Madison's awakening from her physical coma coincided with her emergence from the emotional fog of misplaced trust that had clouded her judgment about her family's true nature. Lying in that hospital bed, processing the magnitude of their betrayal, while they circled her like predators sensing weakness, she made a decision that would fundamentally alter the trajectory of her life. The naive woman who had entered that coma 3 months earlier was gone forever. replaced by someone who understood that survival required strategic thinking and decisive action. Her first move was establishing secure communication with the outside world, away from the watchful eyes of family members who seemed to monitor her every visitor and phone call. Using the hospital's patient advocate services, Madison discreetly contacted her college friend, Samantha Brooks, who had built a successful legal practice specializing in complex financial litigation and family disputes. Samantha had always been Madison's intellectual equal, someone who understood both the value of wealth and the importance of protecting it from those who would exploit familial relationships for financial gain. The conversation with Samantha revealed the full scope of the legal and financial assault Madison faced during her unconscious months. "Madison, what they've done to you is absolutely unconscionable," Samantha explained during their first secure phone call, her voice tight with professional anger. "Derek has been systematically undermining your legal rights while you were unconscious, using your medical condition as justification for assuming control of your affairs. The competency challenge he's filed is clearly opportunistic, designed to establish legal grounds for accessing assets he suspects you have but can't locate." The evidence Samantha had gathered painted a picture of betrayal that extended far beyond emotional abandonment into the realm of potential criminal activity. Derek had been forging Madison's signature on various documents, claiming emergency authority to access their joint accounts and make financial decisions on her behalf. He had convinced several banks that Madison's prolonged unconsciousness constituted a medical emergency, requiring immediate spousal intervention, successfully draining accounts that Madison had carefully maintained for years. Brittany's activities during Madison's coma revealed an even more insidious form of betrayal. She had been systematically impersonating Madison in phone calls to various financial institutions, using personal information gathered over years of sisterly intimacy to convince representatives that she was authorized to access account information. "She knew your social security number, your mother's maiden name, even the name of your first pet," Samantha reported with disgust. "She used that information to build a profile of your financial life that she then shared with Derek and your mother." The discovery that Patricia had been forging Madison's signature on legal documents while she lay unconscious represented perhaps the most shocking betrayal of all. The woman who had given birth to Madison, who had claimed to love her unconditionally, had been systematically signing her daughter's name to powers of attorney and financial authorizations that would have given Derek unprecedented access to Madison's hidden wealth. "Your mother actually tried to establish herself as your healthcare proxy with financial decision-making authority," Samantha revealed. "If you hadn't woken up when you did, they would have had legal control over everything." Madison's first legal victory came through comprehensive psychological and neurological testing that definitively proved her mental competency following the accident. The results were unambiguous. While Madison had suffered physical trauma, her cognitive abilities remained completely intact, her decision-making capacity unimpaired, and her understanding of complex financial matters as sharp as ever. The test results demolished Derek's competency challenge and exposed his legal maneuvering as purely opportunistic rather than medically justified. With her competency legally established, Madison began the delicate process of securing her most valuable assets before her family could locate and target them. Working with Samantha and a team of financial security specialists, she quietly moved her cryptocurrency holdings to new, more secure wallets with enhanced encryption and protection protocols. The early Bitcoin investments her father had helped her make in 2011 had grown exponentially during her unconscious months, their value increasing even as her family plotted to steal them. Derek's response to Madison's legal maneuvering revealed the desperate urgency driving his behavior. Unable to access the assets he suspected existed, and facing the collapse of his competency challenge, he escalated his tactics in ways that crossed clearly into criminal territory. He attempted to have Madison declared mentally incompetent through false medical testimony, recruiting corrupted healthcare professionals willing to provide opinions contradicting the official competency evaluations. The revelation about Dr. Williams' corruption came through the doctor's own guilty conscience and fear of legal consequences. He approached Samantha privately, confessing that Derek had offered him substantial financial incentives to alter Madison's medical records and provide testimony supporting the competency challenge. Derek promised me $50,000 if I would certify that Madison's brain injury had permanently affected her judgment, Dr. Williams admitted during a recorded conversation that would later prove crucial in criminal proceedings against Derek. The medical record tampering extended beyond Dr. Williams to include other healthcare professionals in Derek's growing network of corruption. Hospital administrators discovered that several staff members had been offered bribes to provide false information about Madison's mental state during her coma, creating a fictional narrative of brain damage and cognitive impairment that could justify external control of her finances. The systematic nature of this corruption revealed Derek's determination to seize Madison's wealth, regardless of legal or ethical boundaries. As Madison's legal team gathered evidence of her family's criminal activities, she began to understand the true scope of the conspiracy against her. This wasn't simply a case of family greed exploiting a medical emergency. It was a coordinated criminal enterprise designed to permanently strip her of her independence and wealth. Derek had been planning this betrayal long before the accident, using her unconscious months to implement a strategy he had been developing since learning about her mysterious financial independence. The growing strength Madison felt as she reclaimed control of her life came not just from legal victories, but from the clear moral distinction between her family's criminal behavior and her own ethical response to their betrayal. While they had chosen deception, forgery, and corruption, she had opted for legal transparency and legitimate self-protection. The contrast highlighted not only their poor character, but also the wisdom of her father's advice about keeping her wealth secret from those who might be tempted to exploit familial relationships for financial gain. The revelation that would shatter Madison's understanding of her family's betrayal came from an unexpected source: the very private investigator Derek had hired to uncover her financial secrets. Shane Wilson appeared at Madison's hospital room door 3 days after her legal team had successfully demolished Derek's competency challenge, carrying with him evidence that would transform her comprehension of the conspiracy from family greed to premeditated criminal enterprise. Shane was a man haunted by conscience, his weathered face bearing the weight of discoveries that had fundamentally challenged his professional obligations. "Mrs. Harper, I was hired by your husband to investigate your financial holdings," he began without preamble, his voice carrying the gravitas of someone about to reveal life-altering information. "What I discovered goes far beyond hidden assets. Your family has been planning this betrayal for over a year, and what happened to you wasn't an accident." The evidence Shane presented painted a picture of calculated malice that exceeded Madison's darkest suspicions about her family's character. Derek had been systematically investigating her financial independence for 18 months before the car crash, hiring Shane initially to conduct discreet surveillance and financial background checks. "Your husband suspected you had substantial hidden wealth," Shane explained, spreading photographs and financial records across Madison's hospital bed table. "He wanted me to build a complete picture of your assets so he could plan his approach to accessing them." The timeline Shane had constructed revealed Derek's affair with his secretary Sarah had been running parallel to his investigation of Madison's wealth, suggesting that both betrayals were part of a coordinated strategy rather than separate emotional and financial crises. "The affair started around the same time Derek hired me," Shane reported with obvious disgust. "Sarah was actually helping him gather information about your habits, your communications, even your private conversations. She was part of the conspiracy from the beginning." Brittany's involvement in the conspiracy predated Madison's accident by nearly a year, beginning when she accidentally discovered encrypted files on Madison's computer during a family visit. Instead of respecting her sister's privacy, Brittany had hired a tech specialist to break the encryption and uncover Madison's cryptocurrency portfolio. "Your sister knew about your Bitcoin holdings months before the accident," Shane revealed. "She shared that information with Derek and your mother, and they began planning how to access those funds in case of an emergency or opportunity." The most devastating revelation concerned Patricia's role as the conspiracy's architect rather than a passive participant manipulated by Derek and Brittany. Madison's mother had actually initiated the family's coordinated assault on her daughter's independence, using her maternal authority to convince her other children that Madison's secrecy was a betrayal of family trust that justified extreme measures. Your mother was the one who suggested that Derek should find a way to gain legal control over your assets, Shane explained. She felt entitled to your wealth because she raised you. The car accident itself had been deliberately orchestrated by Derek as the culmination of months of planning and preparation. Shane's investigation had uncovered Derek's careful research into accident staging, his study of insurance policies and traumatic brain injury protocols, even his consultation with corrupt medical professionals about the long-term effects of coma on financial decision-making capacity. Derek caused that accident intentionally, Shane stated flatly. He had been looking for the right opportunity to create a medical emergency that would give him legal access to your finances. The evidence supporting Shane's conclusions included recorded phone conversations between Derek and his conspirators, financial records showing payments to corrupted professionals, and even GPS tracking data from Derek's phone showing his presence at locations where he had been gathering intelligence about Madison's activities and assets. Your husband spent months studying your routines, your financial habits, even your conversation patterns, Shane reported. He knew exactly how to manipulate the argument that night to create the emotional state he needed to justify losing control of the vehicle. Patricia's agreement to support Derek's criminal conspiracy had been secured through promises of financial compensation once they gained access to Madison's hidden wealth. Shane's evidence showed that the three family members had actually signed a written agreement outlining how they would divide Madison's assets once Derek gained legal control, treating her potential death or permanent incapacitation as a business opportunity rather than a family tragedy. They had lawyers draft documents for asset distribution before your accident even happened, Shane revealed with obvious revulsion. The systematic corruption of Madison's healthcare providers had been planned and implemented during her coma as part of Derek's strategy to establish permanent control over her affairs. Shane's investigation revealed that Derek had researched which doctors and administrators would be susceptible to bribery, targeting financial pressures and personal vulnerabilities to build a network of corrupted professionals willing to falsify medical records and provide false testimony about Madison's mental capacity. Shane's decision to switch sides in the conspiracy came from his growing horror at the family's callousness toward Madison's suffering and their celebration of her potential death as a financial opportunity. I've investigated a lot of unpleasant family situations, he admitted, but I've never seen anything as cold and calculated as what your family planned. They were actually disappointed when you started showing signs of recovery because it threatened their timeline for accessing your wealth. The evidence Shane provided included recordings of family conversations where Derek, Brittany, and Patricia discussed the optimal duration for Madison's coma, the legal procedures they would need to follow to gain asset control, and even funeral arrangements that would maximize their inheritance while minimizing estate taxes. They had contingency plans for every scenario, Shane explained, including your death, permanent disability, or partial recovery. Your complete restoration of consciousness was the only outcome they hadn't planned for. The revelation that Derek had taken out a substantial life insurance policy on Madison without her knowledge or consent provided the final piece of evidence proving that her family viewed her primarily as a financial asset to be harvested, rather than a human being to be protected. The insurance policy Derek purchased would have paid out $5 million in case of your death, Shane reported. Combined with what they believed were your hidden assets, your family stood to gain more from your death than from your recovery. As Shane concluded his devastating presentation of evidence, Madison realized that her awakening from the coma had likely saved her life in more ways than one. Her family's conspiracy had been building toward either permanent incapacitation or death as the ultimate solution to accessing her wealth, and her recovery represented not just a medical miracle, but an escape from a murder plot disguised as concerned family care. The full magnitude of Madison's hidden wealth emerged during an emergency meeting with her legal team, as Samantha Brooks prepared to deploy the nuclear option in their war against the family conspiracy. The revelation came in layers, each more staggering than the last, as Madison authorized her attorney to access financial records that had been sealed since her father's death 5 years earlier. Madison, Before we proceed with criminal charges against your family, you need to understand exactly what they were trying to steal," Samantha said, spreading documents across the conference table in her law office. "The cryptocurrency investments your father helped you make in 2011 have grown beyond anything we initially calculated. Your Bitcoin holdings alone are now worth $850 million. The number hung in the air like a revelation from another universe, so vast that Madison struggled to process its reality. Her father had convinced her to invest $50,000 in Bitcoin when it was trading for less than $1 per coin, explaining that emerging technologies represented the future of human wealth and that early adoption could provide financial security for generations. "Dad always said Bitcoin would either become worthless or make us incredibly wealthy," Madison whispered, remembering his prescient words about cryptocurrency's revolutionary potential. The cryptocurrency portfolio was only the beginning of Madison's hidden wealth. Samantha's financial specialists had uncovered additional technology investments dating back to Madison's college years, when her father's guidance had led her to become an early investor in companies that would eventually become household names. "Your Facebook investment from 2005 is now worth $40 million, Samantha reported. "Your early stake in Tesla has grown to $60 million. Your various startup investments have generated another $100 million in returns." The real estate portfolio Madison had quietly assembled over the past decade added another layer to her staggering wealth. Properties in Manhattan, San Francisco, and London that she had purchased under shell corporations were now worth a combined $200 million, their values having increased exponentially during the technology boom that had made her other investments so profitable. "Your father taught you well about diversification," Samantha observed. "You've built one of the most sophisticated private portfolios I've ever seen." The total wealth calculation reached nearly $1.2 billion, making Madison one of the wealthiest women in America, despite her carefully maintained appearance of upper-middle-class comfort. Her father's insistence on financial secrecy had protected this fortune from exactly the kind of family predation she was now experiencing, validating his warnings about the corrupting influence of wealth on personal relationships. Derek's escalation upon learning the true scope of Madison's wealth bordered on complete psychological breakdown. The $50 or $100 million he had imagined paled in comparison to the actual fortune, driving him to increasingly desperate and dangerous measures. Shane Wilson's continued surveillance revealed Derek's growing instability as he realized that his criminal conspiracy had targeted wealth beyond his most ambitious fantasies. The attempted drugging incident occurred just hours after Derek's legal team had been informed about Madison's true financial status during settlement discussions. Derek appeared at Madison's hospital room with coffee and pastries, claiming he wanted to have an honest conversation about their marriage and future together. Only Madison's suspicious caution, developed through her recent education about her family's true nature, led her to decline the refreshments that later tested positive for powerful sedatives designed to incapacitate her long enough for document signing. Brittany's break-in at Madison's apartment represented another escalation driven by desperation and greed. Using keys she had copied during previous visits, Brittany spent an entire night searching for cryptocurrency passwords, private keys, or any information that might provide access to Madison's digital wealth. Security cameras captured her systematically dismantling Madison's home office, photographing documents, and even attempting to access Madison's personal computer with various password combinations. Patricia's fraudulent claims about family loans represented perhaps the most audacious attempt to establish legal right to Madison's wealth. She filed detailed court documents claiming that she and her late husband had provided Madison with substantial financial support over the years, including educational expenses, property down payments, and business investments that she characterized as loans rather than gifts. The fabricated documentation was sophisticated enough to require forensic accounting to expose its fraudulent nature. Derek's recruitment of dangerous associates marked the transition from white-collar crime to violent criminal conspiracy. Shane's surveillance revealed Derek's contact with individuals known for debt collection and intimidation, suggesting that he was prepared to use physical threats to coerce Madison's cooperation. "Your husband has hired people who specialize in making problems disappear," Shane warned during an emergency security briefing. He's no longer just trying to steal your money. He's prepared to eliminate any obstacles to accessing it. The staged second accident attempt occurred during Madison's first authorized leave from the hospital for a follow-up medical appointment. Derek had somehow learned about the appointment schedule and positioned himself to create another accidental collision that would either kill Madison or return her to an unconscious state where he could complete his asset seizure. Only the intervention of Madison's security team, hired on Shane's recommendation, prevented the collision that could have ended her life. The family's coordination in targeting Madison's wealth revealed levels of criminal sophistication that extended far beyond simple greed into organized conspiracy. They had developed contingency plans for every scenario, backup strategies for accessing different types of assets, and even alternate legal theories for establishing ownership claims. "They've been planning this like a military operation," Samantha observed grimly. "Your recovery has forced them to accelerate their timeline, but it hasn't reduced their determination to take everything you've built." The life insurance policy Derek had secretly purchased represented the most chilling evidence of his ultimate intentions toward Madison. The $5 million policy, purchased just months before the original accident, included clauses that would pay out even in cases of suspicious death, suggesting that Derek had been prepared to murder his wife for far less money than he eventually discovered she possessed. "This insurance policy is essentially a murder contract," Samantha explained. "Derek was prepared to kill you for $5 million before he knew about the $850 million. As the true scope of both Madison's wealth and her family's criminal conspiracy became clear, the stakes of their conflict escalated beyond simple financial dispute into a matter of life and death. Her family's determination to seize her fortune had transformed them into dangerous criminals willing to commit any crime necessary to access wealth they felt entitled to possess, making Madison's survival dependent not just on legal victory, but on physical protection from people who had once claimed to love her unconditionally. The revelation of Madison's true wealth triggered a final, desperate assault by her family that demonstrated the complete abandonment of any pretense of love or concern for her well-being. Derek's recruitment of Madison's estranged uncle Robert represented a calculated escalation designed to establish alternative legal pathways to controlling her assets when direct spousal claims had failed. Robert Harper had been estranged from the family for over a decade following a bitter dispute over their father's estate, but the prospect of accessing Madison's billion-dollar fortune was apparently sufficient to overcome years of animosity and resentment. Robert's sudden reappearance in Madison's life came with legal papers claiming guardianship rights based on allegations of family abandonment and spousal abuse. The legal strategy was sophisticatedly cynical. By claiming that Derek had abandoned his responsibilities as Madison's husband, Robert positioned himself as the concerned family member, stepping forward to protect her interests. "Your uncle has filed papers claiming that Derek's financial misconduct and emotional abandonment constitute grounds for removing him as next of kin," Samantha Brooks explained during an emergency legal strategy session. Patricia's dramatic transformation from supportive conspirator to concerned mother represented perhaps the most audacious performance in the family's coordinated assault on Madison's independence. In sworn affidavits filed with Robert's guardianship petition, Patricia claimed that Madison's wealth had been acquired through illegal activities, possibly drug trafficking or money laundering, making her daughter a danger to herself and others. "Your mother is now claiming that no legitimate 28-year-old could accumulate such wealth without criminal activity," Samantha reported with obvious disgust. The media campaign orchestrated by Derek and his legal team sought to poison public opinion against Madison by painting her as a mentally unstable cryptocurrency hoarder whose wealth posed a danger to financial markets and family stability. Leaked stories to financial journalists portrayed Madison as a paranoid recluse who had been secretly accumulating digital assets while deceiving her family about her true financial status. The narrative painted Derek as a concerned husband trying to protect both his wife and the broader economy from her potentially destabilizing financial behavior. Brittany's restraining order represented the most personal and painful element of the family's legal assault. Filed under provisions designed to protect domestic violence victims, The order claimed that Madison had become violent and unstable following her accident, threatening family members who tried to help her manage her finances responsibly. Your sister is claiming that your newfound awareness of her betrayal constitutes evidence of post-traumatic paranoia and violent tendencies. Samantha explained, her voice tight with professional anger at the legal system's manipulation. The corruption of Judge Franklin Hayes emerged as the family's most dangerous tactical advantage in their legal war against Madison. Derek had somehow identified Hayes's financial vulnerabilities, including gambling debts and personal investments that had failed dramatically, making the judge susceptible to bribery and coercion. Shane Wilson's investigation revealed that Derek had been making substantial payments to Hayes through intermediary accounts, essentially purchasing favorable rulings in advance of filing legal motions. The discovery that Derek had taken out life insurance policies on Madison without her knowledge represented the most chilling evidence of his ultimate intentions. The $5 million policy Derek had purchased secretly included provisions that would pay out regardless of the circumstances of Madison's death, essentially creating a financial incentive for her murder. This policy is structured to pay out even in cases of suspicious death or suicide, Samantha reported grimly. Your husband has essentially placed a bounty on your life. Derek's recruitment of business associates willing to invest in his scheme to access Madison's wealth revealed the criminal conspiracy's expansion beyond family boundaries. Several of Derek's former clients and business partners had agreed to provide financial backing for his legal assault in exchange for promises of substantial returns once he gained control of Madison's assets. Your husband has essentially franchised his plan to steal your money, Shane reported. He's promised millions of dollars to people who are now financially invested in your destruction. The fourth major attack on Madison's independence came through an attempted involuntary commitment orchestrated by Derek's corrupted medical network. Dr. Williams, despite his earlier confession and cooperation with Madison's legal team, was coerced into providing new testimony, claiming that Madison's resistance to family involvement in her finances indicated dangerous paranoid delusions requiring immediate psychiatric intervention. They're trying to have you committed to a facility where they would have complete control over your medical treatment and legal representation, Samantha warned. Shane Wilson's evidence about Judge Hayes's corruption provided Madison's legal team with the ammunition needed to expose the depth of her family's criminal conspiracy. Recorded conversations between Derek and the judge revealed detailed discussions about ruling schedules, legal precedents that could be manipulated, and even specific language to include in court orders that would maximize Derek's access to Madison's assets. Judge Hayes has been essentially writing Derek's legal strategy from the bench, Shane reported. Brittany's attempted blackmail campaign represented the family's most desperate attempt to coerce Madison's cooperation through pure character assassination. Using manipulated photographs and fabricated evidence, Brittany threatened to release materials suggesting that Madison had been involved in drug use, financial crimes, or other illegal activities that would justify her family's intervention. Your sister has hired professionals to create fake evidence that could destroy your reputation and credibility, Samantha explained. Derek's business associates revealed during Shane's investigation that they had been promised specific percentages of Madison's wealth in exchange for their financial and legal support of his conspiracy. These arrangements had been formalized through written contracts that essentially created a criminal enterprise dedicated to stealing Madison's assets through fraud, coercion, and potentially violence. Your husband has turned your kidnapping into a business opportunity, Shane observed with obvious disgust. The revelation that Derek had been researching methods for eliminating Madison permanently emerged through his internet search history and communications with individuals known for providing violent services. Shane's investigation uncovered detailed research into untraceable poisons, staging methods for accidental deaths, and even consultation with individuals who specialized in making murder look like suicide or natural causes. Your husband has moved beyond theft into murder planning, Shane reported. He's researching ways to eliminate you once he gains access to your accounts. As Madison processed the full scope of her family's criminal conspiracy, she realized that her survival depended not just on legal victory, but on physical protection from people who had transformed from loved ones into deadly enemies. The billion-dollar fortune that should have provided security and freedom had instead made her the target of a coordinated criminal enterprise led by the very people who claimed to love her most, forcing her to prepare for a final confrontation that would determine whether she lived to enjoy the wealth her father had helped her build or died trying to protect it from those who felt entitled to take it. Madison's counteroffensive began with the systematic deployment of evidence that Shane Wilson had gathered during months of investigation, transformed by Samantha Brooks's legal expertise into a devastating assault on her family's criminal conspiracy. The timing was crucial, striking before Derek could complete his plans for permanent elimination, while her family still believed their corruption remained hidden from law enforcement and judicial oversight. The FBI's involvement began when Samantha presented federal agents with evidence of interstate fraud, conspiracy, and potential murder-for-hire schemes that crossed jurisdictional boundaries and violated numerous federal statutes. Your family's criminal activities have involved multiple states, complex financial instruments, and corrupted federal officials. Special Agent Patricia Martinez explained during Madison's first federal protection briefing. This is now a federal investigation with all the resources that designation provides. Derek's arrest for embezzlement and fraud occurred during what he believed would be a routine legal hearing about Madison's competency, where Judge Hayes was prepared to rule in his favor regarding asset access. Instead, Derek found himself facing federal agents with evidence of his systematic theft from joint accounts, forged documents, and conspiracy charges that carried potential life sentences. Mr. Harper, you're under arrest for conspiracy to commit fraud, identity theft, embezzlement, and conspiracy to commit murder, Agent Martinez announced as Derek's carefully constructed world collapsed around him. Brittany's identity theft charges were filed simultaneously with Derek's arrest, based on recorded evidence of her impersonation of Madison during phone calls to financial institutions and her systematic theft of personal information used to access protected accounts. The FBI had been monitoring Brittany's activities for weeks, gathering evidence of her criminal impersonation through wiretapped phones and surveillance of her apartment searches. Your sister's activities constitute one of the most sophisticated identity theft operations we've investigated, Agent Martinez reported. Patricia's perjury charges stemmed from her false testimony in guardianship hearings and competency evaluations, where she had provided sworn statements that federal investigators proved to be deliberately fabricated. The forged documents bearing Madison's signature were subjected to forensic analysis that not only proved their fraudulent nature, but also established Patricia's direct involvement in their creation and submission to legal authorities. Your mother's false testimony under oath represents multiple felony perjury charges, each carrying potential prison time, Samantha explained. Judge Franklin Hayes's corruption investigation expanded rapidly once federal agents gained access to Shane Wilson's recorded evidence of bribery and judicial misconduct. The recordings revealed not only Hayes's agreement to rule in Derek's favor regardless of legal merit, but also his involvement in other corruption schemes involving different cases and litigants. Judge Hayes has essentially been selling judicial decisions to the highest bidder, Agent Martinez reported. Your family's case was just one example of systematic corruption. The discovery of Derek's murder-for-hire plot emerged through federal surveillance of his communications with individuals known to provide violent services for criminal enterprises. Recorded conversations revealed Derek's specific requests for methods to eliminate Madison permanently, while making her death appear accidental or natural, complete with discussions about timing, payment schedules, and disposal of evidence. Your husband was actively planning your murder, Agent Martinez stated flatly. We have recordings of him soliciting specific methods for killing you. Madison's cryptocurrency fortune was officially recognized and protected through federal court orders that established clear legal ownership while providing security against future theft attempts. The complex legal structure Madison's father had created to protect these assets was validated by federal authorities, who also implemented additional security measures to prevent any possibility of unauthorized access by her family or their associates. Your digital assets are now under federal protection, Samantha explained. No one can access them without court orders that would require proving your death or complete incapacitation. Shane Wilson's testimony before federal grand juries provided the detailed evidence necessary to secure indictments against all members of Madison's family and their various co-conspirators. His decision to record conversations and document the conspiracy's development had created an irrefutable record of criminal planning that extended back more than a year before Madison's original accident. Mr. Wilson's conscience and professionalism have provided us with evidence that makes this case essentially bulletproof, Agent Martinez observed. The seizure of Derek's business assets to pay restitution for his theft from Madison began immediately following his arrest, with federal agents freezing bank accounts, real estate holdings, and investment portfolios that Derek had built using money stolen from Madison during her coma. The systematic reversal of Derek's financial gains provided both practical compensation for Madison and symbolic justice for his betrayal of their marriage vows. Your husband's entire financial life is being dismantled to compensate you for his theft, Samantha reported with satisfaction. Uncle Robert's guardianship petition collapsed when federal investigation revealed his own criminal history, including fraud convictions that had been sealed but were discoverable through federal background checks. His sudden interest in Madison's welfare was exposed as purely financial opportunism, motivated by Derek's promises of payment rather than any genuine concern for his niece's well-being. Your uncle's criminal background disqualifies him from any guardianship role, Agent Martinez explained. Dr. Williams's cooperation with federal authorities, motivated by fear of prosecution for his own corruption, provided crucial testimony about the systematic bribery and coercion that Derek had used to build his network of corrupted medical professionals. Williams's detailed confession revealed the scope of Derek's manipulation of Madison's medical care and the deliberate falsification of records designed to support his legal claims about her mental capacity. Dr. Williams's testimony has exposed a network of medical corruption that extends beyond your case, Samantha reported. The unraveling of Derek's criminal conspiracy revealed financial arrangements with business associates who had invested in his scheme to steal Madison's wealth, creating a complex web of criminal liability that extended far beyond Madison's immediate family. Federal investigation of these financial relationships led to additional charges against Derek's co-conspirators and the recovery of funds they had contributed to his legal assault on Madison's independence. Your husband created a criminal enterprise with multiple investors who are now facing their own federal charges, Agent Martinez explained. Judge Hayes's disbarment and imprisonment represented perhaps the most satisfying element of justice for Madison, given his willingness to corrupt the legal system that should have protected her from her family's criminal conspiracy. The federal investigation revealed that Hayes had been selling favorable rulings to various litigants over several years, making Madison's case part of a larger pattern of judicial corruption that had denied justice to numerous victims. Judge Hayes's corruption extended far beyond your family's case, Samantha reported. His prosecution will provide justice for many people who were denied fair legal treatment. As federal agents systematically dismantled the criminal enterprise that her family had created to steal her wealth, Madison experienced a profound sense of vindication that extended beyond simple legal victory. The transformation of her betrayers from predatory family members into federal defendants represented not just personal justice, but validation of her father's wisdom about protecting wealth from those who might be corrupted by its existence. The billion-dollar fortune that had made her a target for criminal conspiracy would now provide her with the resources to rebuild her life on her own terms, free from the toxic influence of people who had viewed her as nothing more than a financial asset to be exploited. The federal courthouse steps provided the backdrop for Madison's first public statement since awakening from her coma, as she watched Derek being led away in handcuffs following his sentencing hearing. 25 years in federal prison for conspiracy to commit murder, fraud, embezzlement, and racketeering seemed almost inadequate punishment for a man who had attempted to murder his wife for money, but Madison found satisfaction in knowing that Derek would spend most of his remaining life paying for his betrayal. Derek Harper has been sentenced to 25 years in federal prison without possibility of parole for 15 years, Samantha Brooks announced to the assembled media. The evidence presented during trial proved beyond reasonable doubt that Mr. Harper deliberately caused the automobile accident that left his wife in a coma, then systematically attempted to steal her assets while planning her permanent elimination. The conviction represented complete vindication for Madison's accusations and total destruction of Derek's claims about loving concern for his wife's welfare. Brittany's 15-year sentence for identity theft, conspiracy, and racketeering reflected the sophisticated nature of her criminal activities and her central role in the family conspiracy. Federal prosecutors had proven that Brittany's impersonation of Madison involved dozens of separate criminal acts across multiple jurisdictions, making her eligible for enhanced sentencing under federal identity theft statutes. Your sister's criminal activities were extensive and deliberate, Agent Martinez explained. She used intimate family knowledge to steal your identity more effectively than most professional criminals. Patricia's 10-year sentence represented perhaps the most emotionally satisfying element of justice for Madison, given the profound betrayal involved when a mother attempts to steal from her own daughter. The perjury and conspiracy charges were enhanced by evidence that Patricia had been the conspiracy's original architect, making her criminally responsible for orchestrating the entire family assault on Madison's independence and wealth. Your mother's sentence reflects not just her criminal actions but her role as the leader of this conspiracy, Samantha explained. Judge Franklin Hayes's disbarment and 12-year federal sentence for judicial corruption provided broader justice beyond Madison's individual case. Federal investigation had revealed that Hayes had been selling favorable rulings for over 5 years, denying justice to hundreds of litigants who had appeared before his corrupted court. Judge Hayes's prosecution has exposed systematic corruption that affected far more people than your family, Agent Martinez reported. His conviction provides justice for many victims of judicial misconduct. Uncle Robert's asset seizure and 5-year sentence for attempted fraud and conspiracy reflected his opportunistic involvement in the family's criminal enterprise. Federal prosecutors proved that Robert had attempted to exploit Madison's medical crisis purely for financial gain, using fabricated guardianship claims to position himself for access to her wealth. Your uncle's prosecution sends a message that opportunistic exploitation of family tragedies will be prosecuted to the full extent of federal law, Samantha observed. The systematic recovery of stolen funds began immediately following the criminal convictions, with federal authorities liquidating Derek's business assets, real estate holdings, and investment accounts to provide restitution for his theft from Madison's accounts during her coma. The total recovery exceeded $3 million, representing not just compensation for Madison, but also symbolic restoration of wealth that Derek had stolen while she lay unconscious and vulnerable. Every dollar your husband stole has been recovered with interest and penalties, Agent Martinez reported. Brittany's forced return of stolen family heirlooms, jewelry, and personal items she had taken from Madison's apartment during her criminal activities provided emotional satisfaction beyond their monetary value. Federal agents had discovered that Brittany had been systematically looting Madison's possessions during her coma, selling valuable items to fund her own lifestyle while her sister fought for life in a hospital bed. Your sister had converted your grandmother's jewelry, art collection, and other family treasures into cash for her personal use, Samantha reported. Patricia's house sale to cover legal fees and restitution payments represented poetic justice for a woman who had attempted to steal her daughter's home and wealth. The federal court ordered the sale of Patricia's property to compensate Madison for forged documents, false testimony, and conspiracy damages, leaving the woman who had given birth to Madison homeless and financially ruined by her own criminal choices. Your mother's financial destruction is the natural consequence of her criminal decisions, Agent Martinez observed. Madison's establishment of a charitable foundation for coma patients and their families transformed her traumatic experience into a source of hope and assistance for others facing similar medical crises. The Madison Harper Foundation provided financial assistance for extended medical care, legal support for families dealing with opportunistic relatives, and educational resources about protecting assets during medical emergencies. Your foundation has already helped over 100 families protect themselves from the kind of exploitation you experienced, Samantha reported. Shane Wilson's reward for his integrity and courage in exposing the criminal conspiracy included both financial compensation and professional recognition that restored his reputation and provided new opportunities for legitimate, investigation work. Madison's generous payment to Shane reflected not just gratitude for his crucial assistance, but also recognition that his moral courage had literally saved her life. Mr. Wilson's decision to follow his conscience rather than his client's criminal instructions prevented your murder, Agent Martinez stated. Dr. Williams's punishment extended beyond criminal prosecution to include the permanent loss of his medical license and exclusion from any future healthcare practice. The medical board's investigation revealed that Williams had violated fundamental ethical obligations by accepting bribes to falsify patient records and provide false testimony about Madison's mental capacity. Dr. Williams's medical career is permanently ended, Samantha reported. He will never again have the opportunity to betray patient trust. The broader investigation triggered by Madison's case led to the exposure and prosecution of additional corruption networks involving other judges, medical professionals, and legal practitioners who had been selling their services to criminal enterprises. Federal authorities credited Madison's case with providing the initial evidence that unraveled much larger corruption schemes affecting multiple jurisdictions and hundreds of potential victims. Your courage in pursuing justice has helped expose corruption that extends far beyond your personal situation, Agent Martinez explained. As Madison reviewed the comprehensive justice that had been achieved through federal prosecution of her family's criminal conspiracy, she experienced a profound sense of closure that extended beyond personal vindication. The people who had betrayed her trust, stolen her assets, and attempted to murder her for money were now paying appropriate prices for their criminal choices, while their victims were receiving both compensation and protection from future exploitation. The transformation from victim to victor represented not just personal triumph, but validation of the principle that criminal behavior, regardless of family relationships, would face appropriate legal consequences in a system committed to justice and accountability. The morning sun streaming through the windows of Madison's new home in Malibu represented far more than geographical relocation. It symbolized the fundamental transformation of a woman who had emerged from betrayal, stronger, wiser, and more purposeful than ever before. The Ocean View estate, purchased with a tiny fraction of her protected fortune, provided the peace and security necessary for deep emotional healing, while serving as headquarters for the charitable empire she was building from the ashes of her family's criminal conspiracy. Madison's journey toward emotional recovery began with intensive therapy designed to address the complex trauma of family betrayal, attempted murder, and the fundamental violation of trust that had nearly destroyed her capacity for healthy relationships. Dr. Sarah Chen, a specialist in trauma recovery and family dynamics, provided the professional guidance necessary to process the profound emotional damage caused by discovering that the people she loved most had viewed her primarily as a financial resource to be exploited rather than a human being to be protected. Madison, your healing process is remarkable because you're not just recovering from physical trauma or emotional betrayal, Dr. Chen explained during one of their sessions. You're rebuilding your entire understanding of human relationships, learning to trust your instincts about people's motivations, and developing new criteria for determining who deserves access to your emotional and financial vulnerability. The therapeutic work was complicated by the public nature of Madison's case and the media attention surrounding her family's criminal prosecution. The friendship with Nurse Janet evolved into a profound bond that provided Madison with her first experience of unconditional support since her father's death. Janet's care during Madison's most vulnerable months had established a foundation of trust that proved immune to the corruption that had infected Madison's family relationships. Janet saw me at my most helpless and chose to protect rather than exploit that vulnerability, Madison reflected. Her integrity during my coma provides a standard for measuring genuine human decency. Madison's professional relationship with Samantha Brooks transformed into a deep personal friendship based on mutual respect and shared commitment to justice for exploitation victims. Samantha's legal brilliance had provided Madison with both protection and vindication, while her personal loyalty offered emotional support during the darkest periods of family betrayal. Samantha fought for me when I couldn't fight for myself, Madison observed. She proved that professional relationships can evolve into genuine friendships when they're based on shared values rather than financial opportunity. The romantic relationship that developed between Madison and Shane Wilson emerged gradually from mutual respect and shared experience with the corruption they had worked together to expose. Shane's decision to abandon his lucrative contract with Derek in favor of protecting Madison had demonstrated the kind of moral courage that provided a foundation for genuine intimacy. Shane chose integrity over profit when helping me meant losing substantial income. Madison reflected, that decision revealed character traits that make him trustworthy in ways my family never was. Madison's charitable foundations expanded rapidly as she discovered the profound satisfaction of using her wealth to address systematic problems that had affected her own life. The Madison Harper Foundation for Coma patients provided financial assistance, legal protection, and family counseling for patients and families dealing with extended unconsciousness and the opportunistic exploitation it often triggered. Every family we help represents a victory over the kind of greed that nearly destroyed me, Madison explained during a foundation board meeting. The scholarship programs Madison established for underprivileged students interested in technology and finance reflected her commitment to sharing the financial education that had enabled her to build substantial wealth. The Harper Technology Scholarships provided not just tuition assistance, but also mentorship programs designed to teach students about protecting and growing wealth responsibly. Education about financial independence is the best protection against exploitation, Madison observed. These students will understand from early ages how to build and protect wealth from those who might try to steal it. The rehabilitation centers for accident victims and their families addressed systematic gaps in support services that Madison had experienced during her own recovery. The Harper Recovery Centers provided not just medical care but also legal assistance, financial planning, and family counseling, designed to prevent the kind of exploitation that opportunistic relatives often attempted during medical crises. We're creating comprehensive protection for people at their most vulnerable moments, Madison explained to potential donors. Madison's relationship with Shane Wilson deepened as they worked together on foundation projects and discovered shared values about using wealth for positive social impact rather than personal aggrandizement. Shane's investigative skills proved invaluable for identifying and exposing exploitation schemes targeting vulnerable populations, while his personal integrity provided Madison with the emotional security necessary for romantic vulnerability. Shane understands that my wealth is a tool for creating positive change rather than a prize to be won, Madison reflected. The wisdom Madison gained from her traumatic experience transformed into practical guidance for other wealthy individuals seeking to protect themselves from family exploitation while maintaining healthy relationships. Her speaking engagements at wealth management conferences and family therapy seminars provided education about recognizing warning signs of financial manipulation and establishing appropriate boundaries with family members who might be tempted by substantial assets. Protecting yourself from exploitation doesn't require becoming suspicious of everyone, Madison taught. It requires developing clear criteria for trustworthiness and maintaining boundaries that protect both your wealth and your relationships. Madison's realization that her father's advice about financial secrecy had been both protective and limiting led to a more nuanced approach to wealth management that balanced security with transparency. She established clear protocols for sharing financial information with trusted individuals while maintaining protection against opportunistic exploitation. Complete secrecy isolated me and created suspicion, but complete transparency would have made me vulnerable to exploitation, Madison observed. The key is selective transparency with people who have proven their trustworthiness through actions rather than words. The legacy Madison was creating through her charitable work represented a transformation of personal trauma into societal benefit, using her painful experience to protect others from similar exploitation while providing resources for positive change. Her foundations had already helped thousands of people protect themselves from family exploitation, medical crisis opportunism, and financial manipulation schemes. Every person we help validates my survival and transforms my family's betrayal into something that serves a greater purpose. Madison reflected. As Madison stood on her Malibu terrace watching the sunset paint the Pacific Ocean in brilliant oranges and purples, she reflected on the journey that had transformed her from a trusting victim into a powerful advocate for justice and protection. The fortune that had nearly cost her life was now providing resources for healing, justice, and positive change that would extend far beyond her personal experience. The family who had betrayed her for money had inadvertently created a legacy of protection for others who might face similar exploitation, making their criminal conspiracy into an inadvertent force for good in the world. The final lesson Madison carried from her experience was that financial independence provided security and freedom only when combined with wisdom about human nature and the courage to protect oneself from those who would exploit trust for personal gain. Her billion-dollar fortune was important, but the relationships built on mutual respect and shared values were the true wealth that would sustain her through whatever challenges the future might bring. The woman who had awakened from a coma alone and betrayed had created a new life filled with genuine love, purposeful work, and the deep satisfaction of using her resources to protect others from the kind of exploitation she had survived. Now I want to hear from you. Have you ever experienced betrayal from someone close to you when you were at your most vulnerable? How do you think Madison should have handled discovering her family's true nature? Share your thoughts in the comments below. And don't forget to hit that like button if this story of survival and justice resonated with you. Subscribe for more incredible true stories of people who overcame betrayal and found strength they never knew they had. And please share this video with anyone who might need to hear Madison's message about protecting themselves while still believing in genuine human goodness. Thank you for joining Madison on this journey from victim to victor, and remember that sometimes our greatest challenges become our most powerful tools for creating positive change in the world. Until next time, stay strong and trust your instincts about the people in your life.